Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and for this Tag Tuesday, we're going to be doing the Historathon Ancient Cultures book tag. Now, this was a tag that was created last year, and I'm basically just going to resurrect it from the dead, 'cause I don't think anyone's done it for like a year or something like that. But it was created sort of in conjunction with Historathon, which the first year of Historathon was last year, and it was created by Rambling Raconteur, and I will leave a link to his video down below. If medieval stuff is more of your thing, I'm going to try to stick mostly with actual ancient history books for kind of the answers to the prompts and stuff. My latest video actually did halfway decently for once about medieval new releases, so if you like that kind of thing, let me know in the comments below if you want me to do like kind of an ancient history new releases video or something along those lines, and I'll do one of those as well. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. So all of the prompts are based on, except for one, are based on like different civilizations or cultures around the world during the ancient period. And so for number one, we got the Romans. So what books, writers, or genres are your bread and circus? So for anyone who's been following my channel for any length of time, you'll notice I got all my nature books like over here. That's probably about 40-ish% of my reading. And then over here we got a lot of history stuff. And that's probably another 40-ish%. Might be like 50-40 and then kind of 10% other stuff. But yeah, pretty much any kind of nonfiction that has anything to do with like conservation or animals or plants or nature or history from pretty much prehistory down to throughout the medieval period. Though this year I've been branching out because of Historathon quite a bit, even though Q3 is like after 1500. Read a lot on like the 19th century this year for whatever reason. But yeah, normally just nature, history, that kind of thing. Alright, number two, the Sumerians. What is a work you read many years ago but still appreciate? So with this one, I'm going to go with a favorite of mine. We got The First Punic War by J.F. Lazenby, who was a historian of classical stuff. He also wrote a couple other books. I know one was on the Second Punic War, known as, I think the book is called Hannibal's War, that I need to get to. But when I was starting to get into ancient history, I was just really attracted to the Punic Wars, and I was like, wait a second, why is there no book? There's a lot of books on, Hannibal, on, Cannae, things like that in the Second Punic Wars, but hardly, and sometimes like on the fall of Carthage and stuff like that, but there's almost nothing on the First Punic War. I think at the time when I picked this up like 10 years ago or 12 years, whatever it was, this was I think the only one in English. I think there's a couple other books that are on like First Punic War topics that are kind of specialized that are in print and stuff now, but at the time this was the only one. And way back then, I had a kind of like a history blog that I was starting to do, like a history philosophy kind of blog thing kind of going on. It didn't pan out too much, but my first real long-standing topic was kind of a history of the First Punic War over like 50 or 60 like articles and entries and stuff. So just really, really love this book, and it has, like I said, it's kind of a lot of like nostalgia and stuff. Though I don't like looking back on it, it's not like mind-blowingly amazing like prose or anything like that, and it's not even like really controversial and like bringing up different topics and stuff or like weird theories or anything like that. Just a nice solid it's a good branch between like a popular history book and like an academic book. It's definitely more on the academic side, but you don't like overturn every single stone that you possibly could and go into the weeds and like kind of lose track like a lot of academic works on like a certain topic. But anyways, for those who don't know, the First Punic War is the first war between Carthage. Started in 264 and ended in 241, and technically I want to say it's the longest military engagement, like military war between two like major powers in the ancient world that was actually continuous. There was a few, like the Peloponnesian War had something like a 10-year kind of Cold War break in the middle where they had wars by proxy and stuff. But yeah, also probably the largest naval battle in the history of ever, even more so than Leyte Gulf and World War II if you count like man for man because of all the rowers and stuff. Anyways, that was a long answer, but cool. Alright, next up we got the Shang Dynasty. What is your favorite non-example to pillory? Okay, so I got one culture that I can't stand in the ancient world, and it's the Spartans. I know, heresy, burn me at the stake. I don't care. I'm gonna make fun. I don't like Spartan culture. I hate how it's like become like the thing with like when people think about like ancient Greece and stuff. They either, you know, default to basically Athens on one side and Sparta on the other. And granted, both of them were pretty wacky as far as like the Greek polis go. But Sparta was like so far out there. Like, I don't know. I think the society was hypocritical. No one would really want to live there. It was terrible. It didn't even like live up. It's just like there's a big myth about like kind of a mirage, I guess is more appropriate on just like how, you know, epic and grand and blah 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 they were. Yeah, you should just read about Thebes kicking their ass sometime. Like, you know, just do that for me. Anyways, there's nothing really wrong with that book per se. So I don't want to pick that one out because actually Paul Cartledge, Spartans here, I'm going to pick out his book on Thebes for a later prompt. But I've read I think 3 or 4 books, and I don't know, it's just everyone talks about Spartans, like I said, and just like, you know, everyone's got them as their like mascots and like logos and stuff, and it's just terrible. It's just terrible. But anyways, for a more like kind of specific thing, while I found this book pretty good, The First Clash by Jim Lacey, there's one thing in the book I can't stand. And this is all about the Battle of Marathon, when the Persians first kind of did the like little like raiding expedition into Greece in 490 BCE, and 10,000 Athenians and I think about 1,000 Plataeans, you know, pushed them off their like little beachhead and stuff, and then 10 years later, then you have Xerxes' invasion of Greece and stuff. Anyways, I think it's actually pretty well written, except for one really crucial part. And he said, the author essentially says, you know, right before the battle began, you know, there's kind of like this stalemate where both sides were kind of just eyeing each other for like a week or so. The Greeks were kind of trying to determine like what their plan of action was really going to be. There was about a mile, about a mile kind of no man's land plain in between the two armies. And his argument is, Herodotus does say the hoplites ran into battle for like one of the first times in their history. The author sort of says, yeah, they basically sprinted 110% the entire mile, like in formation, and just hit the like Persian line. And he even knows they're wearing their panoply, which weighs about like, you know, you got your 20-pound hoplon shield, you know, all your other equipment, accoutrements and everything. So like if you're fully armored and stuff, you got 50, 60, 70 pounds of armor. I'm telling you right now, 11,000 Greek hoplites did not sprint a literal like sprinted a full mile and then fought like effectively in combat right after. Granted, the battle was fairly short-lived and stuff, but that just didn't happen. His argument was essentially, I want to say I can't remember if he's British and he was in like the Special Air Service or something like that, and he was like, well, I can do it, therefore like all of them can do it. And it was just like, I'm not sure that anecdote really adds up. Anyways, it just really annoys me for some reason, that like that one fact. Like there's definitely 2 different camps on arguments on with the running stuff. There's an argument kind of, you know, they kind of did it like at the double, kind of at like a fast marching pace, and then, you know, maybe sprinted the last like kind of short distance to crash into them. There's also sort of the arguments that they kind of sprinted to kind of get through like kind of the arrow fire and everything, and then formed up like closer and everything. But there's no way, like I said, 11,000 guys in full armor and all that sprinted full bore for a mile straight and were like effective at the end of it. I can't believe it. I don't know. Maybe if someone does a reenact some giant city, they get 10,000 people to do it, and I watch it, maybe I'll believe it. I don't know. I feel like these answers, I'm just talking about random anecdotes and stuff, but that's kind of the fun part. All right, what we got here? We got the early Basketmakers. Name an early work that points the way to later monuments. So this is all about like an author's first work and showing how, like, I think their debut is really good. So we got here Cicero by Anthony Everett, The Life and Times of Rome's Greatest Politician. I think this was like one of my first Roman biographies, or one of the early ones anyways. But Anthony Everett, since then, I think this came out in 2000, I believe, 2000 or 2001, 2002, something like that. Looks like 2001. Since then, I found it really good. I did a review of it. I didn't think it was like the most amazing thing ever, but it was still pretty good on like kind of a monumental figure. But he's written, let's see, biographies on Hadrian that I really enjoyed. He's got one on Augustus I haven't read yet. He's got one on like kind of just early Rome. He's got one on the rise of Athens. He's got one on like the death of Alexander. He's got a whole bunch of books, and pretty much everything I've read has been really solid. You know, maybe not mind-blowing per se, but they're really good books to introduce other people to different topics. I think they're just really well done popular histories, just to kind of dip your toes in like an era or a subject or a figure, and that's why I enjoy them. All right, next up we have the Babylonians. So what book did you expect to be impenetrable, but you found quite easy to sink into? For this one, I'm going with Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War. But I'm going with my nice landmark edition. I got a couple of these. I think there's like 5 or 6 out. They need to get Polybius at some point. Like, that's because he covers the Punic Wars and stuff. But yeah, when we had to read part of it in college and stuff or something or other, I thought, oh, this is gonna be like a slog. This was before like I was really into history. Like, it was just starting to become like a thing. I thought it was gonna be a real slog, but Thucydides actually is pretty like readable. Like, he's the first like kind of like Herodotus is like, you know, the first historian. Thucydides is really like the first like real historian, you know, if you know what I mean. But this edition has like tons of footnotes and footnotes, like different annotations and stuff explaining stuff and maps and everything. And that just made it really, really, really easy to kind of just follow along and understand like all the context and like all the different references. I think there's glossaries in here, a nice big index, a timeline. I want to say there's I can't remember if this one has little essays or if that's just the Herodotus one. But like I said, there's just you get tons of notes, references to other people and like other sources, maps. I just found it really helpful. And if you plan on reading, let's see, there's the landmark Caesar, the Anabasis of Xenophon, Thucydides. The Caesar one is the Gallic Wars. This one, Herodotus. There might be one other that I can't think of off the top of my head, but supposedly Polybius is like in the works, but they don't really have like release dates or anything like that. Next up, we got the Persians. How do you organize your bookshelves? All right, so over here we got nature stuff. Well, actually, technically there's a top shelf, which is just kind of like different series and things, I guess, and then like all my old books, like over 100 years old up there. But then we got all my nature books, which are mostly just by last name of the author. Over there we got like field guides, which are kind of just by like topic, like birds or fish or plants or whatever. There's a gardening section. And then over here, when we have the history, we just go kind of more or less kind of chronological. So like ancient histories, Greek history, Roman history, medieval, another medieval over there. And then this is where we start getting to like American/modern. And as you can see, there's not that much. And then there's a few different shelves. There's a World War I shelf. Let's see. Then we got like nonfiction. I don't really know how to like label. Then like my nice books. So I got my Punic War shelf. Kind of some nice classical stuff, like all my Greek plays and the landmarks and stuff. A Tolkien shelf. And then my Folio Society books. And I still will do a library tour at some point. At some point. Oh man. All right. So the next prompt is the only one that's not like a culture per se, and it's the Ishango bone from the Middle Stone Age, Central Africa. And I had to look this up, and apparently they found in the Congo region of Africa this thing known as the Ishango bone, and what they believe it's a bone with like different notches and things like in it, and they believe it's the first like human artifact that is dealing with like arithmetic or math or numbers and that sort of thing based on like the patterns of like the notches and the tallies and everything. It just reminded me too of like some other bones that other cultures use to like kind of keep track of like the lunar cycles and stuff. Really interesting. And let's see, the prompt is, how does the length of a book affect your reading experience? So generally I have a bunch of books going on at once. However, if I get to a book that's like probably around 650, 700 pages, kind of in that length, and if there's not like a lot of like little short chapters and that sort of thing, what I end up doing is with those books, I just more set aside, I'm gonna read X number, like 25 pages a day, or a couple sections, or depending on how many sections are in the book or whatever. Just kind of do it that way over the course of like 2 weeks, something like that. That way I can still read other stuff on the side. I just don't want to be like bogged down for like 5 or 6 days reading like the same thing, because I'd probably burn out of it most likely. Whereas if I do it that way, where I just read, you know, like half an hour or 45 minutes, whatever, I don't know. Yeah, probably more like half an hour, depending on the type of book and stuff. I just sort of do that way, like the rest of the day I can still read my other stuff, especially if it's like usually it's a really long history book, and I'd rather, like, I pretty much always have to read something nature almost every day. So I kind of feel like if I were to just read like, you know, 100 pages or whatever of just a history book, I'd get tired of it. So I do break that one up, but other books not quite as much. I don't know. I don't even know if that answers the question. Right, next up we got the Huns. How do you read / pack books while traveling? Okay, so when I travel or go camping or anything like that, I literally just throw them in my backpack, and that's why they get beat up. Like, I tend not to bring big hardcovers, but you can see, like, you know, that one. I'm not sure what was in my backpack, but it pretty much blew up the cover, apparently. So I generally go for more like paperbacks and stuff. That way I can bring like 2 or 3 of them, and we don't take up as much space. But yeah, they definitely get banged up a little bit. But you know, I don't really. I guess, and usually when I'm traveling or camping or whatever, the only time I really read, because usually I'm doing stuff, presumably, anyways. The only time I really read is more or less like at night, like when I'm back at the tent or something like that for the evening. All right. The Aurignacian Culture, and for those who don't know what that is, they are the peoples that did a lot of the paintings kind of in Western and Central Europe, like at Lascaux and Chauvet, those caves, cave systems and everything. Really cool. The question is, what are your favorite pop culture references to ancient cultures? So I'm not super great with pop culture stuff. So if we're sticking with the Punic Wars and everything, you know, supposedly there's gonna be like some sort of epic, I don't know if it's a TV series or a movie or whatever, on Hannibal, and then, you know, the whole Denzel Washington casting debacle and stuff a couple months ago. So theoretically, Hannibal is gonna be like something to watch at some point. For a really, really obscure reference, for those who know Final Fantasy, play the Final Fantasy games, most of the games have a reference to Gilgamesh and Enkidu. There's usually 2, and they're like always super like minor characters, but I always think that's kind of funny. And then for kind of like a bigger one, I can think of on the computer games, the Total War series. When the first Rome Total War came out, I remember my friend introducing that to me in high school. And then I remember a couple years later when Rome 2 Total War came out, we used to, like, when we used to like hang out all the time, like we would just stay up into like, you know, the early hours of the morning doing different campaigns as like Carthaginians or Gauls or the Bactrians, all kinds of stuff. Just lots of fun. And they're pretty popular. There's like medieval ones. The Shogun Samurai era ones, and then the Warhammer ones are kind of like the big ones, like right now. But anyways, Rome and Rome 2 Total War were the thing for a while. And then lastly, we got the Minoans, established trade routes and texts and booktubers. So there's a few history booktubers that I talk with and stuff, and most of them have already it's on the tag. So there's only 2 I can think of that I didn't see that they had done it, that I think might have good, like, you know, I guess get like a lot of the cultures and stuff. So we got John over at Nicholas of Autrecourt and Fred with Read by Fred. I'll leave a link to their channels. You should definitely check them out if you like nonfiction and stuff. I think they'll have good answers. But if you read history and I didn't tag you, definitely do it. Like I said, I'm bringing this one back from the dead. I don't know. We'll see. It might be short-lived, but I had fun doing it when I saw it. So there you have it. That is the Ancient Cultures Historathon tag. I'll have to look and see if they had one for like each quarter, because I was not active last year. So I probably missed a whole bunch of things. But let me know what you think about any of the questions, answers, that sort of thing. And always remember, whether you're reading history or not, read victoriously.